All right, everybody. This is number 7 from the 2016 released items, and this is a quadratic equation situation. They're asking which of the following equations listed, which of the quadratic equations listed do not have any real solutions. Drag and drop each appropriate equation into the box. So, whenever they ask for solutions, they're talking about solving a quadratic, right? And when they talk about real solutions, or something that's not a real solution, then we're talking about ones that have imaginary solutions, right? So if it's not real, then it would be imaginary. Let me actually write that below so I have a little more space above. So not real, we're talking about imaginary. Okay. Now, the way we can tell if it's an imaginary solution is, if you remember the quadratic formula, then it's equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a, right? Now, the only way that we can have an imaginary solution is if this comes out to something that is negative, right? Because we can take the square root of anything positive and it'll come out to a real number. We can take the square root of 0 and it'll come out to a real number. We just have to make sure that this is positive, right? And we've talked about this before. I gave you guys a list. Let me actually just do this on another page, just to show you. But what's underneath the square root of the quadratic formula is called the discriminant. And the discriminant we'll call d, and that's equal to b squared minus 4ac. Okay, if d comes out greater than 0, then you're going to have 2 real solutions. Okay, if d comes out equal to 0, then you have 1 real solution. And if d comes out less than 0, then you have 2 imaginary solutions. Or you can think of that as no real solution, right? And that's what we're looking for, is no real solution, right? And so back to the other page. So what I want to do is I want to figure out which one of these has a negative discriminant, right? So what I have to do, 2 things. First of all, in order to use the discriminant, we have to put our equations into quadratic standard form like this: ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So in other words, I have to set one side equal to 0. So that's already done for us in a couple of these, right? Like this one's already good, this one's already good, and this one's already good. So we can already use the quadratic or the discriminant, at least in those situations, right? And I'm going to leave one of these to you, okay? So, or one of these 3 that I just underlined. But what I'm going to do is I'll leave you that last one on the bottom, and you can figure out if it's real or not. But for this this first one on the left here, I have to identify a, b, and c, right? So here, a equals 1, right? There's an invisible 1 right there. B would be negative 10. Don't forget the negative. That would be a big deal if you forget that. And c equals 34. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug all that into the discriminant. And remember, let me just write it on this page too. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, right? It's what's underneath the radical there. So I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to do negative 10. Don't forget to put in parentheses. Negative 10 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 34. And I'm just going to plug that straight in the calculator, just like it looks. Okay. So I'm going to do that right now. You might be able to hear the buttons. So negative 10 squared in parentheses minus 4 and then parentheses 1, and then in parentheses 34. And that comes out to negative 36. So because it's negative, because of that negative there, let me circle it. Because of that, that means I'm taking this and dragging it here, because that means I have no real solution, or two imaginary solutions, how you want to think of it. Okay. All right, so that's that one. Now, this next one, that's already set equal to 0. I'm going to do that one next. This one's a little tricky because we have the 1 right there. We know a is equal to 1. That's not that tricky and similar to what we had before on the first one. B is negative 3. No big deal there. But C, there is no C here, right? So whenever there's no C, we're gonna put 0 for C, right? Because we could put a plus 0 here, and that wouldn't change the value of the equation. And so that's what C is when you don't see it, right? When you don't SEE, then it's a 0. Okay. All right. So now that we have that accounted for, now we can just plug it into our formula. So it's going to be b squared, so negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 0, right, equals. Now, if you notice here, when you square this number, right, that's always going to come out positive, right? Because when you square a negative, it comes out to a positive. When you square a positive, it comes out to positive. So that always come out positive. And then because we plugged in 0 here, this whole thing is going to come to 0, because 0 times anything is 0. So this will always come out to a positive, right? This will come out to positive 9. So whenever C is 0, whenever you see this happen, you don't even have to evaluate it, because you know, since you're squaring this number and you're that's going to be positive, and then you're subtracting 0, you're always going to get a positive result. And so anyway, so this right here is going to come out to where you have 2 real solutions, and so it's not one that we want to put into the box. We don't want to drag it in there, because that does have 2 real solutions, right? Okay, since the discriminant came out positive. All right, so now hopefully you feel comfortable with this one. If you still don't get it, just Edmodo me, and I'll still help you with that. But I just want to leave a little bit for you guys to earn it, and also to practice on your own. Okay. All right. So now these other 2, let me get them in a different color here. This one and this one. The issue with those is that they're not set equal to 0, so I have to set them equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to do one, and I'll leave you with the other. I'm going to do this one right here. Okay, so what I want to do is get one side equal to 0. It really doesn't matter what side. I could either take away x squared from both sides like that. That might be the easier way to go. If I was factoring, I want to keep the x squared positive, so I would add 7x and subtract 18 from both sides. It's kind of up to you. I'll just do it that way, just because that's probably how I'll do it more often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 7x to both sides. And notice we don't have a like term with 7x, so I'm just kind of putting it off to the right over here. Then I'm going to take away 18 from both sides, right? And so these cancel out, and so I get 0 equals x squared plus 7x minus 18. Okay, so now I can see a, b, and c. A is 1, right, invisible 1 there. B is 7, this time it's positive, and C is negative 18. All right, so I'm going to plug all that into the discriminant. So it's going to be 7 squared, in parentheses 7, and then the squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 18. All right, so I'm just going to plug that in my calculator. And right away, like, I already know this is going to be positive. So, you really don't need to know what it is. You just need to know if it's positive or negative, right? Or 0. And really, you just need to know if it's negative or not. So in this case, since I'm multiplying a negative times a negative, that's going to come positive. And this for sure is going to become positive because I'm squaring it. And so no matter what, this is going to be positive. So I know that this is going to be 2 real solutions. So I can do this. But just in case you're curious, I'll put it in my calculator anyway. So it's going to be 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 18 times negative 18. And that comes out to 121. Oops, let me undo that in the right color. 121. Okay. So since that came out positive, that means I have 2 real solutions, which means it doesn't satisfy what they're asking for, which is which ones do not have any real solutions. All right. So I'll leave you with those last 2. So for the one in red here, all you have to do is just identify A, B, and C, plug them in to the to this right here, the discriminant, and then just see if it comes out positive or negative. Okay, or it could be 0 too. But if it comes out 0, that's okay. Then you don't drag it. But if it comes out negative, you're gonna drag it down there, right? Okay, and then the other one you have to do is this one. You're gonna have to set one side equal to 0, so you can either take away 3x squared from both sides, or subtract 4x and add 10, and then identify A, B, and C, and then do the same thing. Plug them into the discriminant there and see if it comes out negative or not. Okay. All right. Yeah, Edmo to me with any more questions. Hopefully that gave you a good refresher on that stuff. And with all these, you can see like this is one again that you guys have all the skills to do. We've done this stuff before, talked about it before. The question we haven't seen one exactly like this where you have to drag and drop, or where they ask you which ones don't have real solutions, but we have solved and we've found ones that have imaginary solutions and things like that. So all right, keep working hard, keep studying, and keep doing these questions, because remember, it's a test grade for Algebra 2 and a big assignment, probably 500 points or more for pre-calc. All right.